right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're still continuing the conversation on access to justice. Have the bar and the bench. The bench are the judges, and the bar, the lawyers and advocates here with me in studio. This is your chance to ask all the questions at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. And Justice Mabea, there's a question here for you. Can the panelists rate performance of the judiciary when it comes to administration of justice on a scale of 1 to 10? Let's start from there first.
1 being what?
1 being
the lowest.
Yes.
10 being the highest. I would say, I'll put it at 8.
8.
8 in the sense that we are doing the best. The judiciary has done or is doing the best in the circumstances that it finds itself.
Yeah.
I will not say that because I could say that out of the entire judiciary, we are about 500 judicial officers, starting from the Supreme Court to the resident magistrate. Yeah. You will never have 100% of them giving 100%. Okay. But with the performance management the directory, which was established during Mutunga's time, we have really tried, and therefore I'll put it at 8% in the performance of its in the administration of justice. Okay. Yes.
Rate, you came, you just walked in. Rate performance of the judiciary when it comes to administration of justice on a scale of 1 to 10.
According to me, I think 8. Okay. Yes.
You're both sticking to 8.
We are both sticking to 8.
Okay. And over there, there's still another question from Okelo Mwalimu. Says, opine on the weakest link in the criminal justice system. What is the weakest link?
The criminal, I would say it is the investigations and the DPP. Okay. The DPP, Audley had given a very good example. They talk about corruption cases taking too long. Yeah. And he said about 37 suspects being charged and having 30 lawyers. If that office was really wanted to send a real message, you don't have to get all the 37. Get the masterminders, who must not be more than 4. And you'll have your case finished within 1 year, and you get proper convictions, and you'll be in a position to do what? To send a message to the rest. Yeah. But when you have 20 suspects and 20 lawyers, it will take more than 8 years to finish that case. Okay. So those two are the weakest links. Okay. Because the judiciary, as we say, and as I said, we always ask, we only wait for the case to be brought, for the case to be prosecuted, then we will make a decision. Where the judiciary should be castigated is where probably good evidence has been produced, cases have been concluded, and no decision coming up. Okay. Yes.
Ochiel, enjoy. This one is for you. It's Gary at Morio KE. He says, in the instance of personal wills left in the custody of lawyers, written or verbal, are lawyers culpable of being compromised because it is a confidential agreement and the beneficiaries are not present when it is being drafted? Ochiel.
Oh, I thought Jay would take that.
I want to hear both your sides. Okay. Yeah. How do you deal with the wills? Because this is something that I tell you, this is what I want to do, but then you can only reveal it after I've passed on. Yeah. So can you then change that? If one of the people who I decided not to leave anything to comes to you and tells you, Nanjua niaje, kuna vile.
We first swore to speak the truth at all times. And again, the nature of a will, it takes effect after the person is deceased. Yeah. And there are conditions that make a will valid. And part of those is having witnesses to it. So other than the person who is deceased, we'll be having other people who signed, who put maybe their fingerprints or appended a signature to whatever was documented on the will. So on the question as to whether a lawyer can be compromised in such an instance, well, the person is deceased, but again, there are people who were there when the person was writing down his will.
So what is the best practice, Ochiel, for a will? So once I write it, Should I leave one with the lawyer and leave one with somebody else? What is the best practice so that there's not that particular thought process that maybe the lawyer changed it?
I think once it's witnessed, you can leave it with your lawyer. And Trevor, that's more of a question of ethics.
Yeah.
And lawyers are meant to be ethical. In fact, we are officers of the court. The court is a place for truth and justice. And the court can punish a lawyer directly because you are an officer of the court. Separate from the rules that we have that govern lawyers' conduct as a society, you have all kind of professional rules and a digest on professional conduct, so that if you find a lawyer entangling themselves in the property of their client, that's a lawyer to be punished. Okay. And the question will be, do we have unethical lawyers? Yes, we do. But then do we have lawyers also who are there to the professional rules of conduct? Yes, we do. And that's why lawyers are licensed yearly. So if you misconduct yourself in 1 year, you can be caught before you become a danger to the public in the next. Yeah.
Okay. Joe, you wanted to add on to that?
Just a little. And in case someone feels like, yeah, there was a will and the lawyer maybe has concealed the fact that there was a will and maybe the witnesses are not there anymore, there are ways of dealing with an estate. We call it an intestate. So you die testate or intestate. Testate is where there was a will, and intestate is where there was no will. Right now you have to go through the whole administration course in court. So as he mentioned, it's criminal to intermeddle with the property of a deceased person in such ways. So if the person who shared the question on social media about a will being concealed, there are other avenues, whether the will is there or not there. There are other ways where the estate of the deceased person can still be dealt with in a fair and legal way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Justice Mabea, Minor Irungu here on Twitter, he mentions a specific case. He says, good morning, kindly forward this question to your panelists. On the 11th of January, our Supreme Court delivered a historic ruling in a case in Loving Mitu Bell versus KAA and the government of Kenya. How is it that up to today, the matter is yet to be fully settled? So I know this is a specific case. You may not comment on that particular case, but are your hands always tied when the court gives rulings and directions, but they're not adhered to? What is the best way of dealing with that once you've done your judgment and then it is not being executed? We've seen court orders being ignored.
Correct.
Left, right, and center.
You see, the wheels of justice have segments.
Yeah.
As a judge, my work ends the moment I sign my judgment. That's the end of my work.
Okay.
The executory part or the execution part of my orders is another department, which has to take, I would say, 3 dimensions. Number one, the court administrator, now the deputy registrar, with the help of the advocates concerned, they extract the orders. The deputy registrar, being the officer, the assigned officer who now signs my orders as the order of the court, signs it. Now for execution, probably it is, first of all, is the court bailiff, the auctioneers, and where there is hostility, now the law allows us now to go to the coercive powers of the state, which is now the police, to give assistance to make sure that the orders are. And that is where there is no what. There is the parties are becoming recalcitrant. So I do not know the position of that case because I don't know about it. But once the court issues the decree or the orders, it is for the party to pursue the court bailiff or the auctioneer to execute the order.
Okay.
Where he has difficulties, that is when now he has to come back to me and say, Judge, Trevor has refused to comply, either punish him or force him to accept.
Okay.
That is where now the assistance of the police can be sought.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And Honorable Gitonga, this issue, you are in the Commercial and Tax Division Department. Do you see some loopholes in the law? Because there are some people who say, there's a famous saying, tax evasion is not illegal. Tax avoidance.
Can I answer that? I deal with, as we speak now, I know the tax cases in my division. We are holding about 110 billion. That is the dispute which is now in my document.
110 billion.
110 billion. For the last 1 year, we have released, I think, more than 100 billion to the economy, because they have decided so many judgments in the past 1 year. You are talking about tax evasion and tax avoidance.
So avoidance is not illegal.
It's not illegal.
Evasion is illegal.
Evasion is illegal.
But there's a very thin line between those two.
It's very thin, but it is for the taxman.
Yeah.
When you come before me, if the taxpayer shows that he's 100% within the laws, and the laws actually allows him not to pay a certain tax, definitely we will stop the taxman from doing that, from demanding that tax. Okay. However, if the taxman is able to show that no, this is probably this expense is not what is not cannot be used to reduce the tax liability. Yeah. We will definitely slap the tax upon the taxpayer.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So it is how the taxman convinces the court that it is within the tax. It is a taxable expense or issue or income, or the taxpayer has to explain that the law allows him to retain the income without being taxed.
Okay.
Yes.
Joy and Boniface Baraza Osili says, ask the legal team why lawyers love adjournment of cases, whether virtually or even in open courts.
There's a thing we call instructions, Trevor. Instruction means money.
Yeah.
So if you haven't put money in my pocket, sometimes you'll hear me say I don't have instructions, meaning you've not paid me what we agreed you'd pay me. But sometimes there are also just human reasons for adjournment. A lawyer gets tired, they fall sick, they get bereaved.
Yeah.
Those are valid reasons. Or they have another case and maybe the date has clashed with another. So you have another case somewhere, then sometimes the court, for example, if the matter is filed for the first time, the court will say, come back on 10th. Okay. When the court is saying, come back on 10th, he doesn't know what the lawyer already has on his diary, because we don't look at each other's diaries. So 2 cases can fall on the same day. And the lawyer might ask for an adjournment to prepare better. There's so many reasons why adjournments are requested. Yeah. And what's interesting is that the Court of Appeal has an authority on when an adjournment should be given. It's also a legal thing because the lawyer will request for it, but ultimately it's the judicial officer to decide if to allow that adjournment or not. Okay. And they look at the reasons and determine if it... So they should be able to know a lawyer who is evasive, who just wants to delay. Sometimes it's adjournments are also tactical. If you're just about to be jailed for contempt, an adjournment would work in your favor.
Well, I echo what my colleague has said about adjournments, right from instructions to the various reasons. And maybe since he's covered the topic, the question really well, there's an issue that was discussed earlier on about children matters, having lack of representation in children matters. I like to applaud the efforts of the branch that currently I can confidently say that no child who's in contact with the law gets to court unrepresented. So the only challenge that we might be facing is because most of these advocates who represent children do it on pro bono basis, and pro bono is not necessarily paid up. You find that they're not given priority, which ends up in the adjournments that are now being asked about. So one, I wanted to make it clear about children in contact with the law having legal representation, and two, lack of prioritization of these cases that are taken in pro bono. Okay. And maybe if you allow me at this point, maybe to make a call to my fellow advocates to express interest in joining the pro bono schemes. Both there's a call by the Court of Appeal and the High Court to try hasten the cases. There's a huge backlog that has been repeated in this forum. So advocates, I'm calling upon all advocates to express their interest in providing their services pro bono to the Court of Appeal and the High Court, so that at the end of the day we ensure that justice is accessed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Justice Mabea and Honorable Gitonga, there's another question that's coming through a lot, and I don't know whether this is in your purview. We're heading into the election season. There will be a lot of utterances here and there, some of them deemed as hate speech. And Gitonga, I'll start with you. Why is it so hard to convict someone, and even you have heard him saying it? You've seen it. Sometimes we air it on TV, and you know this is the contested bite. Then it comes to you. Why is it so hard to just convict?
Well, Trevor, just to comment, of course, before you decide a matter, it's an issue of evidence. It's an issue of evidence, okay? So what you might say might sound like hate speech to one person and not to another. It actually depends on
the person hearing it.
Yes, the person hearing it, okay? So, especially now during the election period, of course, we have this issue of you want to put down someone. So, yeah. You're very keen to hear, if they say this, you would want to say it is hate speech, just for your own
political mileage.
Yes, exactly, political mileage. Okay. So it is hard because sometimes what someone says might just be an opinion to you that it is hate speech, but according to what is presented before court and according to the court, it is not hate speech. So I think each case should be dealt with in its own circumstance here.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Babe.
If I may comment also, Trevor, if I watch your news and you make comments about something, a matter,
yeah,
what somebody has said, I will not use what I heard you give when I'm seated at the confines of my house,
yeah,
the following day to make a determination. I will use what Mr. Haji brings before me, the DPP. He has to bring, if it is a recording, yeah, it has to be produced in accordance with the law. Because a court of justice is a court of law. I have to follow the law.
Yeah.
If it is a recording they did, all the requirements of electronic evidence must be followed. If it is given, then the witnesses come and prove that, yes, these utterances were hate speech. They had the likelihood of increasing tempers or emotions and things like, and bring one of the persons who heard it and said, oh yes, when he said that, this is what happened. That is now the evidence.
Okay.
But most cases, all this is usually not presented. All that you'll do is say so and so he did, and everybody saw in the television. No, that is a different court. In the courtroom, it's the law and the evidence.
Yeah.
And I have to follow what the law says. I can't use what is in my in my mind.
Even if you personally had it yourself.
Even if I was there, then I will not sit.
Okay.
I will not sit as a judge, because I will have a bias.
All right.
Because I heard it, I was in that meeting, I should not sit. Somebody else who has nothing or no connection whatsoever, doesn't know about it, has to hear from the witnesses, is the one to make a decision.
Okay.
Yes.
Enjoy. Kennedy Nyaminde says, I thought legal representation is a right under the Constitution, and the issue of not being able to afford should not come up. Who is eligible for a government-provided advocate?
When you, I'd answered this by specifically mentioning in criminal matters.
Yeah.
When you're taken to court for a criminal case, you deserve, you hold the right to representation.
Yeah.
Under the Legal Aid Act, we have those who are termed as vulnerable, and again, where my interest lies, these are children. Who have to be represented in court. So basically, I'd talk about when you appear in court in a criminal matter, that's when the state accords you representation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not about the financial capability?
Not really, no. There's a difference between criminal cases and civil cases. So this is, for criminal cases, an accused person actually in the Constitution is supposed to be accorded an advocate, actually, a representation, is to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gia?
There's a case the Supreme Court has decided called Karisa Chengo.
Yeah.
And in that one, the Supreme Court says that if you are charged with a capital offense, then you are definitely entitled to a state lawyer. I think children also. And this would just go back to the bench. If a child is appearing before you as a judicial officer, honestly, just assign the next advocate. There's something the court did once with Philip Onyancha. Muite was in court doing another matter, and then Onyancha was there and represented, and the judge just ordered. Remember, we said we are officers of the court. We are there to serve the court. For some of those cases, a child, an elderly man appearing there without a lawyer, the court should just say, Trevor, this is your client. Take that case.
Is that possible, Gitonga?
Yeah, of course, that is possible.
Yeah.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
But just before I would want the public to know that it is not a must you have legal representation, especially in the small claims court.
Yeah.
It is not a must for you to have legal representation. You can actually come to court, file your own claim, present your own claim in court, and actually get judgment in your favor. Because as adjudicators in the court, we are very accommodative, especially to the people who are not represented.
Yeah.
So we make you feel at home. We will ask you which language do you want to use, whether it is Kiswahili, English, or any other mother tongue language. We will provide facilities for interpreters. So I would want, I think people are not aware, and we need to create a lot of awareness, which we are doing, that they should know it is not a must you incur legal costs, especially to pay advocates, and I am not spoiling for my colleagues. It is not a must to get legal representation to access justice. And also, because we know that in the small claims court, we're only dealing with matters which are $1 million and below, even for the matters which are above, just like my colleague, Ochiel said, that we should encourage more advocates to do pro bono work. We should encourage more advocates. Like he was saying, maybe you can be told that if you handle this amount of cases, you've earned 1 point just for the practicing certificate. Yeah. So it will encourage more advocates to give back to the society and do pro bono activities. Yeah. And just like she has said, people need to be aware about the legal aid forums, where there are agencies where you can actually approach and you are represented for free. They need to know. So let the public not shy away from coming to court. Yeah, I think you mentioned a case where maybe your grandmother in the village has a case and she's wondering, oh my God, how will I come to court? Yeah. Maybe even in that case, I'm sure those village cases are below $1 million shillings. Maybe it is just 500 and all. So they should know that we have a small claims court, and this small claims court will be rolled out to other counties. By November, we will have small claims court in other counties, so you will be able to access justice. Yeah. So it is important that they know that you do not have to have legal representation. Okay. You can access justice even if you don't have money to pay your lawyer.
So this small claims court, does it encompass everything below $1 million, whether it is a matter of land, whether it's a matter of money, whether it's a matter of property? Yes. Because there's always the issue around land as well. So it's a contested piece of land. Yes, it is valued for less than $1 million. Yes. Does that cover? And if I can represent myself, what happens to the person who I'm accusing? Do we both need to be there so that then it turns into a he said, she said?
Okay. Thank you so much for that question. Yeah, there are claims that can be filed under the small claims court. Let me start with the claims that you can file under the small claims court. These are claims relating to a contract for the sale and supply of goods or services, contract in relation to money held or received, compensation for personal injuries, and also a set-off or counterclaim. There are also matters which we cannot deal with, and that is, the first one is matters in dispute of land, dispute in land and title or possession to land. Even if it's less than $1 million? Even if it is less than $1 million, we cannot deal with it, sadly. Malicious prosecution matters, matters in relation to defamation, libel and slander, and also employment and labor relations matters. So that cannot be filed in the court. And basically, this is because the idea behind the small claims court was to enhance businesses in Kenya, enhance the ease of doing businesses. So we were looking so much at commercial matters where we want to release money back to the economy. Like right now, as we speak, the award that the court has given amounts to over 250 million shillings. So that means like we have released 250 million back to the economy. So it was meant to enhance investor confidence. Like if you want to have business, invest in Kenya or set up a business in Kenya, one of the things you think about is the justice system accommodative to me?
Yeah.
What if I supply these services and these goods and this guy does not pay me?
Yeah.
Will I get back my money, or will I have to wait for 2 or 3 years?
Yeah.
So because now we have the small claims court,
yeah,
where you can lodge your claim and judgment is delivered within 60 days. So that to our investors is something good, because they will feel like it is a good risk to take even if I supply services and you do not you do not pay me, I will go to court and I will get back my services.
Yeah.
So as the question you asked, if I file my claim in court, of course you have to serve the other party, and we call him the respondent.
Yeah.
So the respondent is served, and also the cost implications to the respondent is also really small. You only pay 200 shillings to file a response to the statement of claim.
Yeah.
So by the time you come into court, we ensure that the respondent has been served. So we listen to you, and we also listen to the offending party, so that we give a decision that is just.
Yeah.
We consider both the claimant and the respondent. And just to finish up, the goodness with the small claims court is that we will hold your hand from the time you file this claim in court to the time judgment is delivered. Trevor, by this I mean, if you come to court and you file your claim and you do not come to court as the claimant, what we will do, the court on its own motion through the registry will call you and tell you, you filed your claim in court, it came up today, you did not come, so can you come on this day, and can you serve the respondent? So we actually work with the parties until the judgment is delivered.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what happens when the respondent is the county government? Because that is where the rubber meets the road. I mean, people supply things, they don't pay. Yeah, and even if it's less than $1 million, how do you deal with that?
No, everyone is under the law. It doesn't matter. Everyone is equal. It doesn't matter if it is the county government or if it is who and who. The court will consider the evidence. Once you are served and you do not appear to present your case, we will enter default judgment against you and you'll have to pay that money. So it is not a matter of who is bringing or who is the respondent. Okay. Yes, we are a court of equal opportunity, yes.
All right.
If I may if I may add, Trevor, on the issue of small claims court, is a very good idea, and as she says, the spirit is for purposes of the small trader, the small businesses to move forward as fast as possible. Yeah. But I know as a fact that one of the biggest achievement of that court is to do away with all technicalities. Yeah. The procedures in that before that court is so informal that any person or any claimant is comfortable and can be able to conduct his business and his case to his satisfaction. And that is why I know as a fact that the Chief Justice in her vision of social transformation through access to justice, she's encouraging not only the rolling out of these small claims courts to the counties. Yeah. I know that there is an initiative to have the NMS establish about 5 of them in the 5 small claims courts in the informal sector, and there will be also the criminal courts, small courts of criminal courts, which will be able to be dealing with the matters so expeditiously, so that we do not have the claimants or the complainants complaining that their cases have taken 1 year, 2 years. It will be within 1 month or 2 months, the matters are settled. Yeah. 5 in Nairobi, which are being in addition to the Milimani one, and then the rest will be rolled down to the
other counties.
Yes. And Justice Mr. Lofty B here is saying, ask them why they jail the chicken thief for long periods of time instead of just weeks, as opposed to public thieves. So this is about sentencing.
Sentencing.
Yes.
I'm a court of law.
Yeah.
I follow the law. His representative, who is a parliamentarian, passed the law and said, if a chicken thief, if a thief, someone is caught stealing a chicken, this is there. Probably it's 1 year.
Yeah.
It is within my the judicial officer's discretion to look at the so-called mitigation. You are guilty. when you stole, what made you steal and what do you want? One, what were the circumstances under which this person, was he hungry, or it is an inherent thing in himself?
Yeah.
If he was hungry, he will be able to explain and say, I'm really sorry about it. I did it because my children had gone hungry for 3, 4, 5 days, blah, blah, blah. Then the judge or the magistrate now takes that into consideration and says, do I put him 1 month? Yeah. Is this somebody who should be removed from the society so that the chicken owner or the owners of chicken can continue rearing chickens for purposes of their personal developments? Or do I put him for a short period? Will there be correction? Will he be corrected? And those are the things that he looks at.
Okay.
The court has to look at.
So it's at the judge's discretion to decide.
After the conviction, yeah. And then the judge looks at the maximum, yeah. What the law says, how long should this person be in custody? Then the judge looks at the mitigation.
Okay.
The sentence should be corrective, to yeah. correct the person. 2, to be able to retributive, because there is a claimant. Probably this person this is the only chicken he had.
Yeah.
He has been taken aback so much.
Yeah.
He is very bitter about it. He might become probably temperamental and fight or kill. So those are the things that the magistrate has to look at before meting out the sentence.
All right. Joy, Njenga Wakungu says it is a high time that our Kenya judiciary and the Law Society of Kenya sought to work together to help make justice accessible to all the Kenyans. There should be very workable policies introduced by the Kenyan judiciary and the Law Society of Kenya that strengthens fairly accessibility to justice. Do you agree with this statement, and is there some kind of a contest between the bar and the bench?
Well, I really don't agree with that, because if we really don't work together, then how are we going to work? I mean, if we work in antagonism, yeah. we can never deliver justice. So for us to be able to say that we're effectively and efficiently delivering justice and working towards it, from where I sit at the bar and also at LSK, I mean, you have to work with the bench. You have to work together. It's about communication, coordination, consultation, yeah? All that, just to ensure that whatever we are preaching, whatever we're saying about administration of justice comes to pass. So, no, I don't agree with that. We do not have any antagonism that would affect the way justice is meted out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to take closing remarks from you on the future of the judiciary, and I'll start with you, Chiel. What do you think are the ways forward in terms of what should be done to make the justice system more efficient?
Well, there's a lot to be done, Trevor, but allow me to just close by speaking about something we've already covered, which is the issue of sentencing. Yeah. You know, we can't make it easier to bribe off the police officer for a traffic offense than to come to court. You come to court, you get a fine of 10,000 shillings. Next time you'll want to bribe the police officer and get off easy. So that's something we need to look at. The sentences we impose on traffic offenses.
Okay.
Yeah.
In fact, that's important, because someone, I think it was Nyaminde here, who asked what is the best way of dealing with traffic offenses?
The judiciary has tried to pioneer some instant fine system. I don't know how far it went, but we really need to look at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Joy, your closing remarks? The future of the judiciary, even this legal aid awareness week that you're talking about.
Mine is just to encourage members of the bar to volunteer their services in oneness to further this cause that we chose. Yeah. So it doesn't matter your little effort. It could be just taking one case in a year in your line of interest, support that cause. I remember someone mentioned, or rather my colleagues mentioning about maybe having your pro bono service attached to a CPD point. It's actually happening. Yeah. So if you volunteer your services this week to the Legal Awareness Week in the courts that I mentioned earlier on in Nairobi and Kiambu region, you're getting one CPD point. This is just to encourage us to be there. And beyond that, take it upon ourselves to do what we were called to do. Okay. Yeah. And also embracing ADR, restorative justice. It's not always, justice is not always about the court. So if there are other avenues that you can use, let's embrace them. It's not just about the court being in court, running around the court corridors, having legal representation, which I appreciate it's key. I mean, we need our jobs.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, justice can be meted out in other spheres other than the court.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Honorable Gitonga, closing remarks on the future of the Small Claims Court.
Now, I'm excited about the future of the Small Claims Court, especially in regard to access to justice.
Yeah.
And also in regard of realizing the Chief Justice's vision, her leadership, Martha Koome, that the judiciary is looking towards using the bottom-up approach to ensure that justice is delivered and to everyone, the common wananchi and everyone. So I'm really excited about the Small Claims Court because it is part of that vision, and so far so good. As I have stated earlier, we have actually dealt with so many cases within a span of 6 months.
Yeah.
So you can just imagine what will happen as going forward, because more adjudicators will be placed in the court. The Small Claims Court will be decentralized to other counties, and also judges also talked about the NMS.
Yeah.
We'll have other courts in Nairobi. So I am really excited because I can see that we will efficiently deal with the issue of case delays and case backlog.
Okay.
Going forward, we will have less of that, and we'll also have a situation where the judicial services is accessible to everyone. So there wouldn't be an issue of I cannot come to court because I'm not legally represented.
Yeah.
I cannot come to court because I do not have fees to pay. So everyone will be able to access justice. So the future of the judiciary is very bright, especially in regard to the Small Claims Court.
Yeah.
And I'd also want the Wanjikos there to know about this court.
Yeah.
And to know that you can access this court.
Yeah.
And justice will be delivered to you in a very timely timelines.
Manner. All right.
Yes, yes.
Justice Mabea.
Thank you, Trevor. My parting shot is that I'm hopeful, and I know that, and I promise that the judiciary, the future of the judiciary is very bright. Our Chief Justice has said it, and she has spoken to all of us, the judicial staff, I mean the judicial officers, and we will do all that it pertains, all that it takes.
Yeah.
One, to defend the Constitution, because in defending the Constitution, you are defending the state, the Kenyan state, the country. Number two, we will defend and apply the law irrespective of the people who come before us, and we ensure that justice will be there for all of them. The only thing I will ask that Wanjiko, let Wanjiko ask his member of parliament.
Yeah.
Why is it that I have to travel a long way to take my claim to a court which is 50 kilometers away? Why is it not near me? Why is it not as near as the chief's office?
Yeah.
So that the MP knows that in this country we should have a magistrate's court in every sub-county, so that somebody do not have to traverse looking for this very, very precious item called justice.
Okay.
Why is it that a whole arm of government with more than 5,000 staff spread in the entire country, with all the equipment that it requires, will only be resourced for 17 billion only? And others which only have offices in Nairobi will have about 50 billion. The moment the Kenyan answers that question, then he will know why justice is so expensive for him.
Okay.
Once it is answered in the affirmative, then every Kenyan will be in a position to enjoy very cheap and accessible justice. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Justice Alfred Mabea, Presiding Judge, Commercial and Tax Division at the High Court, Honorable Susan Gakigi Tonga, Resident Magistrate, Milimani Small Claims Court, Joy Madeka, Convener, Legal Aid and PIL Committee, and Advocate of the High Court as well, and Ochiel Dudley, Advocate of the High Court. Thank you so much for making time, and all the best with the cases that I know you need to deal with. That's why I'm releasing you this bang on time, because I know you have quite a number of cases to deal with. Thank you so much for making time. We're taking a quick break here on Daybreak. When we come back, still have a lot more for you, including cooking tips as well. All right, see you in a bit.